AI is not here to replace us. AI is here to make us better, to amplify everything that we do. People who are afraid of losing their jobs know that if you understand today how AI works, you'll be fine because it's going to make you better for what you do.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Data Security Decoded by Rubrik Zero Labs. My name is John Murphy, and I'm excited to be back again as your guest host for this episode. Our guest for today's episode is Aysha Khan, the CISO and CIO at Treasure Data, where she leverages over 2 decades of experience in managing technology and security at Fortune 500 companies. Aysha excels at aligning cybersecurity strategies with business objectives, fostering innovative security environments, and leading global teams. Beyond her corporate roles, Aysha is a dynamic speaker, a life coach, and an avid investor in cybersecurity startups. I learned so much from her as she shared her valuable insights on the evolving world of cyber policy and the strategic integration of AI into cybersecurity. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. Aysha, before we dive into our main topics today, I just have a quick icebreaker kind of question, just to get us started. If you could organize a cybersecurity summit with 3 figures from history or from present, who would they be and why?
Sure. You know what, John, I thought about this question for a while. Actually, I've been thinking about it the whole week. Who would I invite? What cybersecurity conference? And eventually what I landed on, you might be surprised to hear, I don't want another cybersecurity summit. What I want is, instead of having a cybersecurity summit, there's nothing wrong with them. I think we have plenty of them. Instead, what I want is us to truly think about what a conscious leadership means. And I want to infuse conscious leadership in our security summits. A lot of the time, I feel like people come in, they talk about only security programs. But what's lacking in our organization is the awareness that security is not any longer a technology problem, it's a business problem. But in order for us to do business right, we have to become better leaders first. So from that point of view, my answer is simple. Let's focus on more infusing leadership in our security summit. And who are the people that I look up to, who are so inspiring in the world? For me personally, the first name that comes to my mind is Satya Nadella from Microsoft. The way he has transformed the whole organization from doing just coming up with another product to having a growth mindset and infused with empathy. So that's one. The other leader that I think of is Hamdi Ulukaya. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he's the founder of Shivani Industries. It has nothing to do with security. But if you look at these people, whether it's Satya or Sadhguru or Hamdi, or even Simon Sinek, what I see the commonality is they are putting people at the center of everything. And I believe this is not my line. I read this line from Inder Inouye, which I loved when I first came across this specific phrase. She said 3 P's that matter in our business world. One is people, second is purpose, and third is performance. And basically what she's saying is if we hire the right people who are passionate about what they do, we don't have to worry about their performance. So for me, it's all about having the right leadership, hiring the right people who are passionate about what they do, and then show them their potential for them to reach new heights.
Absolutely. Absolutely fantastic point. It's a stellar answer. And I think goes to kind of the thing that we all struggle with sometimes from our leadership perspective, but it really does come down to effectively building teams. You've got to find the people who have the passion for it and who really just want to do the best job that they possibly can. That's a great thought, well thought answer. So with your deep roots in technology, and we'll talk about a little bit of that as we get into the conversation, could you share one tech gadget or a tool that's top of mind for you right now? And tell us a little bit about why.
Absolutely. So I am in this double role of CIO and CISO. So not only have to think about how do I make my internal employee base productive, but also how do I secure and innovate at the same time. So top of my mind right now is the whole AI journey. How do I enable my R&D to keep innovating while keep in mind, security is not an afterthought. It's shift left. But honestly, from a CIO point of view, how do I make sure that I also bring AI into everyday thing? You want to be AI first company. So the whole AI tech is very fascinating to me. But one tool, and actually I would say two tools that are catching a lot of my attention right now. One is Clean. I just spoke to the CEO of Clean this morning, um, figuring out what is the right strategy for us. As much as I want to rely on our internal LLM to enable people to take risk, come up with new use cases, I'm also realistic about what is possible because we are not going to compete with Clean. We are a CDP company, but how do I strike the right balance between bringing the tool that enables my corporate side as well as I enable innovation on the product side? And then second tool that comes to my mind is Times. Great product, how they are helping us automate a lot of things. We are very early on in that journey, but really seeing the potential and what we can do with that.
Yeah, excellent choice. It's funny, those of us who are in the industry, right? We're probably here because we love technology at some point. And it's always fun to just kind of look at things that aren't, let's say, in our daily life, but just kind of capture your imagination from a tech perspective. And it's good that after so many years in the business, we can still have that and fall back to it.
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to the conversation about AI, I was reading this article this morning where people are like, hey, are we still in the hype curve? And I think hype is behind us. Yes, they're almost a year or 2 years ago when people used to talk about AI, I used to say it's a hype. Today, I feel like we leaders have gotten to a point where we understand there is no way out of it. It's happening. It's real. It's something we need to get on. Either you're going to be left behind or you're going to embrace it. So it's real. It's happening. But where a lot of us are still evaluating or looking at our ROI is how fast we want to go. Do we want to start slow and build and expand, or you want to go all in? And I think the answer is going to vary from organization to organization, investment, funding, a lot of those things. But I'm excited. I'm very bullish on the whole AI field.
Absolutely couldn't agree with you more. It's funny. There was an article this morning about Microsoft, and I think the question was looking at their next earnings call and what they were going to announce based upon the fact that they've invested so much in AI. And it just struck me as kind of, way too soon to be asking the question around what kind of return are you getting from an AI investment? This is, to your point, this is a generational thing that's happening to holding companies.
I think that is the next question on every CFO's mind. What is the ROI? And CIOs are grappling with this reality. It's like, okay, we know a lot of us are asking, hey, how do we become more productive and efficient? But showing the actual ROI is not that easy yet. So I'm still doing my own calculation and figuring out how to come up with that formula.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those cases where even if the payback isn't visible today, you're laying the foundation for just incredible growth as we continue to evolve those borders.
I think for me, the summary is why I want to get on AI journey is to do more with less. And that's the thing. I mean, look at what's happening in the SaaS industry, the earnings, the IPO readiness, and all these factors. With that, all of us are being asked to do more with less. So for me is how are we going to do on that? AI is that agent that is going to enable us.
Yeah, that's actually a great segue to our next question. So given your extensive experience shaping cyber policy and strategy in Fortune 500 companies, what advice do you have for senior security leaders on how to prioritize the places that they should invest? What initiatives they should actually take on these days?
Yeah. Thank you for asking this question. I think this is going back to that awareness, conscious leadership, because often I feel like CISO specifically feel they don't have enough power. And I always say you don't have to feel empowered. It's not an outside thing. You have to be empowered within. So know that your role there is to educate the rest of the organization. So the first thing I would say is understand your business, understand your context. One size doesn't fit all. So with that, understand your growth factors. What are you there to enable the business for? So in my case, for example, and if you are in the SaaS business, so we are a CDP, and I could tell you a little bit about, just to answer this question. There are about 7-8 billion people on this planet Earth, And treasure data stores about 300 plus billion people data in our ecosystem. So just imagine as a data custodian, the responsibility I have. But from a CISO point of view, what leadership needs to be aware of is number one, understand your context. Number two, build trusted relationship. For you to figure out your growth factors, for you to understand what are the company priorities, you need to talk to all your peers, CMOs, CFOs, CIOs, CTOs, CPOs, figure out what are their pain points. And then the next thing, at least what I've done in my organization, is created a very simple alignment chart, which is we are in the function of enablement. We are not a stick. I want to run parallel to innovation. I'm not a blocker. You go and take the lead and doing what you need to be doing on the product side, on the GTM side, but keep us in the loop so that we can enable you and empower you. And the way I would tell the leaders to think about is think about how security can enable GTM. That's your one pillar, and how security can enable the R&D. So when I say GTM, think about where your company is heading in terms of compliance. Compliance is one part of security, but it is not comprehensive security. So if you can understand and align with your CRO, hey, what are you building? Where are you going? What industries? What segments? What regions? Then you can figure out what compliance needs you have to address ahead of time. Similarly, on the research and development side, leaders have to align with CPOs and CTOs and figure out what is the technology roadmap? What are you building? How do I make sure that I bring security with shift left mindset? And if we infuse security and privacy early on, then we don't have to worry about issues later on. So my advice is, again, understand your context, build trusted relationship, be the function of enablement, and align with GTM and R&D, and you will be fine.
Stellar answer. You covered a lot of the field there. Absolutely. So you've got a track record of building and leading technology organizations and security functions from the ground up. What key elements do you focus on when you're developing a new cybersecurity infrastructure and building the teams that support it?
First of all, I'll go back to the first principle that I talked about from Indra Nooyi, which were the 3 Ps: people, their passion, and showing them the potential so that you don't have to worry about their performance. So I'm very much focused on what is my team, because I can only go as far as the potential capabilities of my team. So have a solid team. The number 2 thing I care about, where is the company heading? So what are my growth factors? What am I looking at? And then from there, where are the problems? I don't wait for somebody to come and tell me, hey, there is a problem, go fix it. The problems are right there. And I often tell my team, it is great that I have visibility, but visibility isn't enough. I really need to know how are we going to solve these problems. And to solve these problems, we have to have up-to-date industry understanding of what's happening in the world around us, macro, micro, what tools are out there, how do we consolidate better, how do we become more efficient? So it's a continuous thing, but it comes down to growth mindset. So for example, I'll give you 2 specific examples here. So I started with Treasure Data as their security person and took on becoming a CISO. But at that point, I was not responsible for the IT world. And 6 months into being a CISO, my CFO asked me if I can take over IT. And it was a very interesting question the way he asked. He said, hey, I was just wondering if you can add value to IT. He didn't say take over IT. He just said, I'm just wondering if you can add value to IT. And my answer was, I consider myself a person of value. Wherever I will take on, I will definitely add value. But I want you to be aware of one thing. I come from a security world. That's where I have spent the last 20 years building organizations. I'm getting into this IT world, but you will have to be patient with me because 1, I'm going to shape things. Number 2, coming with a brand new perspective. I don't have preconceived notions of this is how it's supposed to be doing, which is good and bad in both ways. But then I will get to know the people. I want to understand where the problems are, and I will see it from a different point of view. But I can tell you things are not going to be changed in a quarter or 2. I will need at least 3 to 4 quarters. So I want you to be patient. I want you to be realistic. And I need concrete expectations here. So on that journey, I went back to all my stakeholders and I said, now I'm taking over IT as well. I want to understand your pain points. I want to know where you guys are struggling. What is your expectation? Do you see IT as a help desk only, or do you see as the function of innovation and enablement as well? So those conversations were very meaningful. And I realized that there is IT and security, there is a lot of synergy in terms of talent. The biggest benefit we got was quick decision making. And combined funding also enabled me to do a lot more with less. So that was that. The second thing I would say, when I took over the Sec DevOps function, that was another realization that there's so much synergy between SRE work, the development work that we are doing, the security engineering work that we are doing. How do we optimize for efficiencies? So those were the two examples where saw disjointed functions, a lot of overlap, wasted time. When we got to a stage where the structure made sense, we gain a lot of efficiencies.
Yeah. Excellent points. And you bring up something we mentioned it slightly before the start of the call. One of the traditional views of security is that, you become the chief no officer sometimes. And you're always the one who says, oh, we can't do that for the following reasons. Clearly, that's not you by any stretch. But what are some of the strategies that you've used to, security awareness is critical, right? And especially given the challenges that we're facing with social engineering becoming much better, and with AI actually helping the bad guys to figure out how to be better social engineers. So from an awareness perspective, what are some of the approaches you've used with your non-IT stakeholder to sort of drive us to that conversation of awareness?
Yeah. The first thing that I do want to highlight, my first day when I took over as head of security, and I was talking to my CFO, not a technical person, and he trusted me with my abilities. But when I got into that meeting, the very first thing I told him, good, bad, or ugly, you're going to hear from me directly. Good, bad, or ugly, I want to hear from you directly. If people are not coming and telling me what the problem is, then they are not helping or interested in solving the problem. They just want to gossip. But if somebody is interested in solving a problem, then I want to hear from them directly. So that's one. So meaning, again, going back to that trusting, build that trust early on. The second thing I would say is I'm very blunt about this in my organization. My number one job is to highlight risk in the organization. So it goes back to, again, that good, bad, and ugly. Every time there is something happening, I'm the first one to tell my CEO and CFO, hey, FYI, this is something coming up. So I am a chief risk officer, whatever you want to call, but my job is to highlight risk. We are the eyes and ears for the organization. But then I'm also very realistic about there is no 100% security. We always have to be aware of what is the context, what do we need to address, but then we always have options. And the options are very much accept, mitigate, remediate, avoid, transfer. Those are the options. So what I have done for my organization is we have clearly defined our risk tolerance. And then the next thing is we have formed a committee where on a quarterly basis, we present all the risk that we are seeing in our organization. I want to crack a joke here that I often talk about, which is I tell my leaders the same thing. If I'm going to jail, I'm not going alone. If you just saw a head on the chopping block, there are a lot of CISOs out there who would be happy to do that. But I am here to make the difference, to move the needle forward. So I am going to come up with all the risk in our organization, and nobody can make unilateral decisions. So for example, if there is a risk in our R&D organization and our CTO or CPO says, you know what, I'm willing to accept that risk. They don't have the option to accept that risk by themselves because of the committee that I've formed. So what we have done is now we present all those findings, we give them a chance to explain themselves, and if this person comes and says, I am willing to accept, my CLO and myself are the first one to say, explain yourself. Because you are taking the risk on behalf of the entire company, because now we have the risk tolerance. And if we don't agree, then we vote against that. And if all of us are not in agreement, then we take it up to our CFO and CEO and say, this is beyond our risk tolerance. So now we have a framework and everyone follows that. So there is a lot more harmony. But I can tell you the upside of it. For example, our CTO explains the situation where he's like, hey, I believe in it. I want to fix this problem. But for X, Y, and Z reasons I am not able to commit to it. Then I understand now at that point, I'm not only acting as a CISO, chief risk officer, I am acting as his ally. And at that point, what I do is I look into my CFO and I say, he's absolutely right. He can't take this risk alone, but why is accepting it? Because he doesn't have resources. So we need to give him the resources for him to do what he needs to be doing. So now the conversation has changed from blaming, hey, you didn't do it. There's no blaming, there's only awareness. But now we all are aligned that he needs help. So then we talk about shuffling priorities, responsibilities, giving resources, and enable him to do what he needs to be doing for the organization. And then outside of it, at the implementation layer, what I've done is we have security champion programs. We incentivize empowered behavior. We are constantly making reports available to all our engineers and saying, here is what we are seeing. And if you reduce these vulnerabilities, one, you're doing the right thing for the organization. But we have constant games going on where the teams which are reducing the number of vulnerabilities the most are incentivized for that behavior. So long story short, there's awareness, there's gaming, there's training. But the biggest thing that's working out is we have created this culture of security and privacy with a sense of responsibility, and everyone now gets it.
Excellent. I was with a couple hundred risk managers last week. And it was a board of boards conference. It was really well done. But they talked a lot about, sort of the evolution of the risk world. So if you've been in the industry for a long time, parts of the organization carry a lot more risk than, let's say, they might notice, or they might actually document in a risk register or something along those lines. And the challenge with that is, to your point, you can't compare what risk you're carrying to your risk appetite if you're not aware of the risks that's in the environment. So getting to that level of transparency where you're acknowledging, hey, there's more risk here that I might like, but I personally in my area don't have the ability to address the underlying problem. Therefore, I think I need to carry it on behalf of the organization, really gets you to the point where now you can have that conversation with the different parts of the organization that might be able to help and to get the clarity on that issue.
Exactly. I mean, what's the point of me just showing you visibility into where the risks are, but we are not going to take any action? And then later on, now we have SAC ruling. I think we're going to talk about that topic as well. How can I contribute to meaningful reporting if I am just in scapegoat? That doesn't help. So that's why I said empowerment comes from within. I feel I'm empowered. I feel I don't need anyone to come and tell me what's my job. I know what's my job. And my job is to first show you where the problem is, then hold you accountable, and then third, help you address it.
Yeah. It can't be, I think this is right what you just said, it can't be a game of musical chairs where when the music stops, you're the one without a chair, right? It doesn't work.
Exactly.
We've talked about AI in a couple different scenarios here so far. And we can't have this as leaders. We can't have a conversation these days without at least going down the path of, hey, where is AI going to take us? What's your take on what's going to happen to us over the next 3 to 5 years from a cyber perspective and an AI perspective?
Yeah. The inner child within me is excited. I'll tell you a funny thing. Back then, this is when in 80s and early 90s, when I was a kid, I used to wake up every morning watching this cartoon called Jetson. I don't know why a lot of people don't know about it, but back then, Jetson used to fly in one-person robotic car, and everything from brushing his teeth to, getting ready for office was done through the robotic world. And I often talk to my friends, I'm like, I saw that 20 years ago, and you still have nothing close to that. Well, I mean, AI is taking us on that journey. So I'm excited personally for that. And that's why I said I'm really bullish. But the reality is it's here, it's staying. So my advice is to be prepared. Both sides are invested. And when I say both sides, I'm talking about the good side and the bad side. Both sides are equally invested in using AI for good and for bad. But the winning platforms will be the ones that are enabled to protect AI systems and defend against AI attacks. And that's where I want to be. So where I see 3 to 5 years things are going, both sides are equally ambitious, excited, committed, And that's going to be a fun thing to watch. I just hope the good side makes conscious choices. And that's why I talk about, conscious leadership early on. Make the right choices for the right reasons. I don't know if you're going to win, and I don't want to get into a good versus evil. But if what we are committed to, if we do the right things, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, it's absolutely the kind of the constrained versus the unconstrained view of human nature and where things go.
Yeah.
How do you, at Treasure Data, how are you managing some of those challenges today?
So what I'm doing, and I mean, there are a lot of things staying on top of what's happening in the industry, making sense of what matters to us. There's a lot of noise. I'm trying to say, okay, leave the noise side. Where are the signals? The following those signals. Then on top of it, as I said, my priorities are very much aligned to where the G team is going. So how do I stay aligned? And for that, I follow a secure control framework, which is there's so much compliance out there. We are SOC 2, ISO 27001, 17, 18, AI compliance, GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, you name. There's everything under the roof that we are exploring. How do I stay on top of it? How do I reduce compliance fatigue? How do I enable the GTM to do the right thing in the right segments and early on enable them from the RFP point of view, getting the right businesses? But then on the R&D side, how do I ensure the right security practices are baked into everything that we are doing? How do I make sure the AI that we are developing internally for our product is built with the right mindset, with the right practices? So there's a lot that is going into where security organization needs to enable the business. But what I am trying to do is to stay on top of everything and then constantly hold everyone accountable, making them responsible, and infuse consciousness saying, hey, we have to do the right thing, because don't see it as we are forced to do it. We are the leaders. We are at the forefront of it. What we do today matters tomorrow. So how are we going to show up?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And I think, it goes to something we touched on before, which is the traditional view of risk was, well, if it's a big enough risk, what you want to do is craft ways around not recognizing it. And I think what we've seen time and time again, and regulators have gotten, I think, much better at this, is they made it clear we understand why that was the case before, but what we really want to understand now is just how prepared are you to recover? How prepared are you to be resilient in the face of something that you just could not predict was going to happen?
No. And I'm not surprised at all that this happened. In fact, I'm happy Security came out. First of all, I mean, people were like, oh, what do you think? And things are going to change. And I was like, I'm not surprised that it's happening. In fact, I'm happy it's happening. Again, this is a good thing for CISOs. Back then, if CISOs in organizations, I don't know which organizations are those, but I used to hear these horror stories where CISOs were like, they were scapegoats. Now, SEC ruling is saying, you don't have to do it alone. The framework that I talked about is exactly what SEC ruling is trying to propose. Don't have unilateral conversations. Make sure that you have done your part in informing your leadership, telling them about where the risks are. And if there are risks, how are you holding them accountable? So I am happy that it's there. It puts some rigor, creates some discipline. So great from that point of view. Privacy laws are another one. I'm happy for those as well. Yes, right now I feel like what is not realistic is every state is coming up with their own thing. Good for us is many of them, if you pick up, are talking about the exact same thing. So this is fine. But I feel at some point we need more of a federal privacy law than state privacy laws. Because imagine the way we are up until everything is aligned and similar, great. But if there are going to be differences, how are we going to do businesses with other states? And then imagine if we have regional laws, then how are we going to deal with those laws? So I feel at some point there needs to be some consolidation as well.
Yeah. And I think if you look at how we've gotten to the point we've gotten to with, let's say, labor practices, as a practical example, we're probably facing very, very different labor practice laws 120 years ago at the turn of the last century. And it's only through innovation and experimentation that you get to the point where you've got now a practical set of things that most people can agree on. And that comes together. It takes time. But certainly, you look at CCPA or California's rules around data protection and data privacy, and they provide you a good enough head start. Now, you may look at Colorado and say, well, Colorado is better in this regard. But that's perfectly okay. That's what we do with product in general, right? It's always about innovation and
Take
trying
the
to.
best of everything and create one universal one.
Yeah. Very good. What is your advice for other senior leaders as you're looking at this and maybe thinking about how their organizations have been in the past, but wanting to adopt exactly some of the same very forward-thinking topics that are ideas that you've got progressed here? How do they get started?
First, they should feel empowered. They should know that they are a real C-level people. They shouldn't be feeling like they need somebody's permission to do the right thing. That's one. Understanding your business. And they say one size doesn't fit all. It's what I'm doing for my organization. You think there is value in your organization, take from what I'm saying and apply it in your organization, but still make sure that you're not going and thinking in this illusion that there is 100% security. There is no 100% security. And third, I would say again is building solid relationships, leading with empathy, up and down, right and left, understanding what's happening, what do people want, and how do I enable. One thing that if I can help top management understand is security is not a technology problem, it's a business problem. Treat it as such. It's a board level topic. Give your CISOs full visibility into your boards. Have the honest conversation now so they are empowered and they can give you the information that you need to make sure your business is resilient. For CISOs, my advice is build that relationship up and down and become the function of enablement. We are not a stick anymore. I promise you, I've seen this many, 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 many times in my entire career journey. Stick never works. I have a stick. I can take it out sometimes if I need to, but I'm not a stick. I am a function of enablement. I am a function of empowerment. I tell people they can do anything. Just let us run and empower them.
Yeah, it is. To your point, it's very much about it's enablement for a business outcome, which is ultimately what cybersecurity and technology really are. So I want to pivot a little bit and ask you about some of the things you do outside of your day job, if you will. So you're actively involved in lots of different initiatives, and one that's near to my own heart is equity and inclusion and diversity, and how do we get more people involved in the conversation, especially when it comes to leadership roles and management. What impact do you think those initiatives have had to date? And what would you change about them going forward?
If I can change one thing, this idea somehow when people or organizations have these deep initiatives, somehow they're thinking they're doing organization a favor or people a favor. It's not a favor. It's a necessity. It's absolutely a necessity. I can tell you diverse workforce means diverse viewpoints, diverse experiences. Imagine now you're tapping into that diverse mindset, experience it. You can build a product that caters so many different ethnicities, origins, experiences. You build a better product using that experience. So data is out there. I'm not going to get into it too much, but you talked about what can we change. One, it is not a favor to your organization. It's a necessity. So use it to your advantage. But then there is a flip side. I want people, not the management, employees, to get out of their own way. And when I say this, often I feel like, and I'm a classic example. And the reason I want to be vulnerable here, because I want people to know that vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a strength. Look, I'm very much aware that I have accent. When I used to be early on, I often say, if you have a voice, that doesn't matter. But if you have something important to share, talk. Many times people get in their own way. They have their own doubts, limited beliefs. I had this, oh my God, I have an accent. How can I speak up? People will make fun of me. And I had to get out of my own way saying, what am I thinking? Just because I have it, and I think I talked about it in another podcast as well, I have accent because I grew up in a culture which is different than where I am today. But I was exposed to 6 different regional languages early on. English was my fifth or sixth language.
Wow.
you know so now I have an accent for a reason, but it doesn't really matter. I had to tell myself, stop thinking that way. You have something to share, tap into that. So when we talk about diversity, that's why I said organization needs to stop thinking that diversity is a favor to the organization. It's not. You need it if you want to grow, if you want to be diverse, if you want to create awesome products, if you want more outreach. Include those people in those conversations. And for the people who are part of those conversations or are hesitant to get into it, lean into it. Get out of your own way. Help us understand what matters to you. Why do you care about diversity? What are your experiences? What do we want to learn from you so that we can build better products, better organizations?
Excellent point. I think what struck me as something is really interesting there is we usually talk about FUD. One of the things that I hated to hear when I was on the buying side or the implementation side of technology was someone trying to influence me via FUD, right? It's just, well, if you don't do this, here's all the terrible things that will happen to you and the sun will come crashing down and blah, blah, blah. But I think you make a great point, which is we also need to look at that in our own personal lives, our own leadership style to say, if you limit yourself because of, fear, uncertainty, doubt about what exactly it is you're doing, it's probably unclear to you how that's going to help the organization. And you need to really understand that.
Absolutely. And the other time, there's another point that I feel like organizations often go wrong in building a strong culture. They will just pick one person and say, you are the diversity person, go lead with it. What does that even mean? Yeah. Lead with an example. Employees want to see that you care. Just saying, hey, here we have the diversity officer, so I'm the deep executive. But I can tell you, when I was just telling people, come to the table, tell me what's going on, you weren't going too far until I changed that into, you all are diversity champions. Your voice matters. I am just here to create a platform, but it's you who are going to drive it. So we stop just picking one person and saying, hey, this is the person who's going to lead it. No, we need to see more examples, lead by example.
Absolutely great point. And the transformational stuff I've seen in my own career often comes down to whoever is in that role not being held accountable to some standard that's going to be measured over the next 6, 12 months. It's what's the organization doing every day to kind of push the limits of what they've done in the past and achieve some of those objectives.
For you to believe that someday you're going to wake up and there is going to be a culture, it doesn't work that way. No. You have to put in effort. And going back to what you put is what you're going to get out.
Yeah, absolutely true. All right. So we are running short on time. I'm going to transition to our last question. And we have, sort of a routine on our podcast of when we ask those who are attending with us to just kind of look back on their careers and then look ahead. And given all that is happening from an AI perspective and a culture change perspective, are you more pessimistic or optimistic about the future, do you think?
I think you already got a sense of it from my conversation. I'm very optimistic.
I think I know the answer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. I believe in humanity. Our originality will never be replaced. AI is not here to replace us. AI is here to make us better, to amplify everything that we do, So for anyone who is thinking, oh, what's going to happen to my job? I think I recently posted something about fear, not about AI, something about fear. And what I said was, fear is nothing but your best friend telling you there is something within you that needs more work, more updating. So people who are afraid of losing their jobs know that if you understand today how AI works, you'll be fine because it's going to make you better for what you do. But if you don't know, then think about it, how it's going to replace you. That's going to happen. So yes, there's the reality. It's going to do that. So why don't you learn to it? But the benefits are, I'm very optimistic and bullish on it.
Excellent. Now that's great to hear. And obviously it comes across in everything you've talked about. Aysha, thank you so much for making the time to join us today. This has been enlightening for me, certainly. And I know our audience is going to absolutely eat this conversation up. Hope to have you back soon. And we just want to say thank you again for everything you're doing to kind of push our profession to the next level.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.